world, it's always been, okay, hey, this is great. When he spoke, he talked about this 400,000 year cycle, the last 400,000 years. And over the last 400,000 years, there have been 4 distinct 100,000. It's because of global warming. And what the result of it is what? Massive sea animal deaths.
Yes.
How many times have you seen an article, seen a picture where they have all these mures, these seabirds washing up ashore, or sea lions, or fur seals, or humpback whales, or Pacific cod, especially along the coast of Alaska, yes, and all these different areas? It's because of this. This is killing off sea life. There was something called the blob that was in the Pacific, mm-hmm, that spanned hundreds of miles. And these marine heat waves, exactly, are also, guess what, becoming, since the year 2000, more frequent. The sequence is shorter. They're coming more frequently. That's a problem that's just indescribable.
Right.
It's as big as the ocean, and it's just growing, and it's growing. Sea level rise, let's talk about that. You mentioned John Englander, and one of the things he said in that speech he gave at the Royal Institution in London, and when he started his speech, he said, you know what, we've been asleep for 5,000 years. Ever since writing started, the sea level rise hasn't really gone up very much. We're spoiled. That's why we build all these coastal cities, yes, and coastal, exactly, communities all over the world. It's always been, okay, hey, this is great. When he spoke, he talked about this 400,000 year cycle, the last 400,000 years. And over the last 400,000 years, there have been 4 distinct 100,000 year cycles. Mm-hmm. And during each of those 100,000 year cycles, here's what's happened. Whenever CO2 in the atmosphere was at 180 ppm, worldwide global temperatures dropped by 5 C. Mm-hmm. A lot of ice. New York City be covered with ice in that case. Mm-hmm. Conversely, every time over those 400,000 years and during a 100,000 year cycle, when CO2 went above 280 parts per million, temperatures went up every time, 4 times over 400,000 years, 5 C. At 5 C, that equals 394 feet of sea level rise in every cycle. It happened 4 times over, yep, 400,000 years over every one of those cycles. Every 100,000 year cycle had an 80,000 year cycle of cold, the 20,000 year cycle of warm. We just ended the 22,000 years of cold, but human heat, we create heat. We've altered that. We've altered it. Let's talk about Greenland for a few minutes. Here's another huge chunk of ice. It's the second largest on the planet. 1,800 miles length, 600 miles wide. The ice is 1 to 2 miles thick. That ice contains about 23 feet of sea level rise if the whole thing went down. What's happened since 2000 is that the glaciers in total at Greenland, they've doubled their rate of ice mass loss. Yep. Same story we're hearing. Remember 2000 is that inflection year. And the volume and intensity of the ice mass loss today, models of the experts, people like Jason Fox, who's, yep, one of the world's leading authorities on Greenland.
And so this blue dotted line is the median, and the median for right now is about, would be right down here, would be about 15% melt. And we're just a nudge above 50% melt for the 22nd. And the day before that, it was about 48% melt. The day before that was the highest stop. From here, the cumulative melt days so far this year. The white area is getting smaller, and this is the area where there's been no melt at all, not even one day for the year. And we can see that this is closing in. The light blue, even one little dot of light blue, you know, that's 1 day of melting. And we're seeing on this west side, we're moving into greens and yellows, and that's 40 to 50 days of melt for the year so far, and green's up here at the north end.
Way ahead of schedule. Prior to the year 2000, what happened with Greenland is you had a balance. So every warm cycle during the spring, summer would be replenished every winter cycle by new ice, new snow that formed ice. So it stayed on balance until the year 2000. Since 2000, it's going the opposite direction. Exactly. So there again, same thing. I'm going to give you an example of a glacier there called the Helheim Glacier, one of the bigger ones. It's down in the southeast corner if you look on the map. Okay. From the Helheim Glacier, it's huge. If you took a boat directly east, you'd run into Iceland.
Okay.
But it was stable. It was the Rock of Gibraltar from 1950 to 2000. Here again, since 2000, guess what? The Helheim Glacier has lost 5 miles of ice. And last year, it broke off a 4-mile wide iceberg. It broke off floating around out there somewhere in the southeast of Greenland, raising sea levels. So that's Greenland. Now, I'm going to go to the Arctic next. This is probably the most sensitive area of the planet, ecosystem-wise, that also has the biggest impact of all these ecosystems on especially our lives, and especially agriculture and things like that, because of the radical changes that have taken place. A couple of times, I have personally met Peter Wadhams when he comes to Scripps Oceanography Institute in La Jolla, and he's the leading expert on the Arctic. He was with Cambridge. Yep. He's professor emeritus there. I think he's taken 50 trips to the Arctic. Yep. But for thousands of years, the Arctic has absorbed carbon until this century, and now it's emitting it all over the place. Exactly. So it's in competition, if you will, with our cars, trains, and planes, isn't it?
Oh, that's a good way of saying it.
So here's the thing, though. If you look at there was a study done, 14-year study done by Woods Hole Research, and of the entire Arctic, and over that cycle, it emitted 1.66 gigatons of carbon per year, and it absorbed 1.03. So it emitted 0.63 gigatons more. Well, what's a gigaton? A gigaton is a billion metric tons. It's also equal to 166 million elephants. Let me say that again. A gigaton is 1 billion metric tons, which is equivalent to 166 million elephants. It's big. So there we have a situation where we got all these elephants now flying up into the sky out of the Arctic. 25% of the northern hemisphere is covered by permafrost. And the National Academy of Sciences did a virtual session, I think it was in May, headed by John Holdren of Harvard, who was a key guy for the Obama administration on climate and that kind of stuff. And they talked about the permafrost that covers the northern hemisphere. And I thought they were very forthright and straightforward about what they were saying. He had a couple of scientists who are experts, one from Woods Hole and another from, I think, the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And they said that the permafrost, methane, and so forth, carbon, is not included in the IPCC calculations at all. They don't even look at that because they claim they didn't have enough data. It contains 1,500 gigatons. How many elephants is that? Okay. That's over 150, 200 years of the current fossil fuel emissions, right up there in the permafrost. Dr. Katie Anthony was one of the speakers, and she said, we're standing at the threshold of a abrupt change in permafrost carbon emissions. And she also said that 14,000 years ago, you had all these thermokarst lakes that formed. We see those now. You see these big indentures, fills up with water. Back then, 14,000 years ago, she said it flared up 4C over 8,000 years. She said today will flare up 4C above pre-industrial in 80 years.
Yes.
Well, at 4C above pre-industrial, it doesn't support human life any longer. planet
Exactly.
doesn't.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So here we've got people. She also said something about the East Siberian Arctic Shelf, which is by far the most controversial region of the Arctic. It is huge. It's equal to the size of Germany, France, the UK, Italy, Japan combined. It's subsea permafrost that's underlain by hydrates of frozen over the eons methane. It's huge. And 75% of this subsea permafrost, and most scientists in the world today talk it down.
Yes, exactly.
They're not worried about it. They push it aside, don't deal with it. It's not going to be an issue. They claim that the methane will oxidize as it comes out of 75% of this is in shallow water. This is what I talked with Peter Wadhams about. It's only in 50-meter water. So when it comes up in the water column, it doesn't oxidize. It comes up to straight methane, straight up into the atmosphere. That's the big risk we've got, that we would get some kind of a runaway global warming if that really melts off. And the temperatures they've had up in that region, 86, 93 degrees Fahrenheit, right on the where the continent meets the subcontinent that's underwater. It's not just the East Siberian Arctic Shelf, by the way. It's the Laptev Sea,
Yes.
and it's Barrett Sea, and these other ones that are up in, over Russia. They're loaded with frozen methane under permafrost that is thinning rapidly. Let me just give you some recent examples of what's going on. It's kind of scary stuff, really. In October of last year, 2019, there was a 40-day research mission on this huge ship, and Igor Simultov, the Russian scientist, he made the following statement. They were out floating around the East Siberian Arctic Shelf. I've just been talking about that. Here's what he said. This is the most powerful seep, meaning methane shooting up in the column in the water, that I've ever been able to observe. No one has ever recorded anything similar.
Exactly.
And that was on a 40-day mission. They found it bubbling up like champagne in the water all over the place.
Exactly.
And where it used to be a diameter of, say, a couple feet, it had gone to half a mile.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
And then at the recent IPCC meeting in December of 2019, Dr. Peter Carter, and he talked about an ongoing methane eruption at the Barov Atmospheric Baseline Observatory, which was established by NOAA in 1973. They monitor. They're looking for this kind of thing exactly. And he said, we've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
He said it went up to 2,500 parts per billion. It just stayed there, and it's still staying there. And he said, you know, we have ice core that goes back 2.2 million years, and the maximum we ever saw was 800 in 2.2 million years. All of a sudden, we got this persistent reading of methane shooting up into the atmosphere of 2050. The people at NOAA made the following statement about that. They said the spot, they call it spot CH4 or methane, levels breaking the 2000 ppb mark so sharply in this fragile region is unprecedented. Now, it's not only methane that's happening, by the way. There's something else at work here that's very concerning in the high Arctic, and that's nitrous oxide.
I'm glad you're going to say that.
It's the third most important greenhouse gas. And there was a 2018 study that was done of thawing permafrost. And they found that nitrous oxide was releasing 12 times higher than ever previously assumed. Nitrous oxide is 300 times more potent than CO2, and it has a 120-year life. And guess what else it does? Guess what else? Remember we talked about CFCs, and the ozone molecules? It also depletes ozone. So here we have nature. It's not DuPont. Nature's just displaced DuPont. Now it's nature depleting the ozone via nitrous oxide, excessive amounts of it. Because when you have the normal course of these kind of things, nature somehow circulates and makes it work. Sure, there's been nitrous oxide that seeped forever, but not at 12 times normal rates. Then it throws nature out of balance. And now that's gobbling up our ozone molecules. You know, you couldn't write a worse horror movie if you tried to than this kind of stuff. And then you've got these recent massive fires.
Hang on a second. Let me go get that bottle of gin, and then you can continue. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, okay. But here's the other thing I haven't even touched on yet in the Arctic. Two things. One is the jet stream behavior.
Yes.
And you mentioned Jennifer Francis. Have you interviewed her, by the way?
No, I haven't, but so I'm very familiar with her, deeply appreciative, but I've not interviewed her as part of this series.
Yeah, because she's the one who kind of discovered this whole jet stream problem that's happening because of the melt off of the Arctic. Yes. And in short, what happens there is because you're losing the ice of the, over the Arctic, and you will have an all blue event coming up real soon. You don't get the albedo effect that you normally get because the biggest reflector on the planet's always been the Arctic, reflects out the sunlight radiation, most of 80% of it back into outer space. Yep. When you lose it, the dark background absorbs it. But that also has a huge impact on the jet streams.
Yes.
The jet streams have these big circular things that have been going on forever at the top of the northern hemisphere. Plus, you're getting the temperature differential between the tropics and the Arctic is changing. So the jet streams, instead of this kind of a pattern,
right,
big loops, they do big loops.
Yep.
And when they do the big loops, they almost become stationary for a while. Exactly. So it's changing all of our weather behavior. So you might get a tranche of really cold, unbelievably cold weather that just shoots down in here. And then the next day, it could be like the Sahara Desert. I mean, that's how crazy it's become.
And sometimes it can hang out there for weeks or longer.
And that's the thing. It gets stalled as well. So this is going to eventually throws off all of our agriculture.
Yeah, we've lost the stability of the Holocene.
And this was updated to the 22nd, so the forecast goes out to Saturday. So you can see it thinner up here in this Chukchi area, but thinning way down here in the central part of the Beaufort Sea, and just it's really diminishing. And we're kind of running parallel with 2012. We're still above 2012 for extent, but we're well below the median. But it's a pretty steep angle down. Here's the Antarctic. We can see it's below the median. See the brown line is the median. See it's well below the median. Here's the refreeze chart. And it's this angle is kind of drooping for this last day or two. And see, it had been going up at a steeper angle, but it looks like it's drooping now. And this is last year. We're well below last year, and that was well below the median. So we're still at record lows here. So worldview, I have to warn you that the satellite view, they don't have that data for the last few days for whatever reason, and so we can't look at the satellite view, but we'll do what we can. Also, before I go there, this is their July report on the Greenland ice sheet from National Snow and Ice Data Center, and this was posted on July 19th, and they did acknowledge that it's a sudden shift to southern heat. And okay, I'm just going to read this one paragraph, and I'll leave the link and y'all can look at it if you want. It says, late June ushered in a significant shift in weather and melting for Greenland. particularly for the southern portion of the ice sheet known as South Dome, where melting is currently on a record pace. Melting along the northern rim of the ice sheet is also greater than average. These changes are a result of a shift in the air circulation associated to negative North Atlantic Oscillation Index values. High air pressure now covers the island, bringing warm winds from southwest and favoring sunnier condition, enhancing the surface melt in the ablation zone, for which the extent is now close to the previous records in the summers of 2012 and 2019. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, big change there. Thursday, look at that. Look at this from Wednesday to Thursday. Look how this Chukchi Sea opened up. Friday, Saturday, and here we are today. And you'll see holes open up and then they close up. This is typical, especially when you've got kind of thin, mushy ice and a hole will open up with the ice drift one day and then it closes back up.